One of the things when I was getting ready to go to Belize, a lady that I know in California had some ministry involvement with, said, "You're going where? You're going to do what? You need to come and learn about this." So I went out and I went to the seminar and I found out about storying or Bible storytelling or whatever you want to call it. And it's a wonderful method to just share the scripture and dig into it. I don't want to take a lot of time to tell you the whys and hows. We'll experience some of that. But get this in your mind to begin with. For one, if you have a Bible, put it away. Put it away. Because here's what happens when we do normal Bible study. We get them open, and we're looking at it, and if the pastor asks a question you don't know, what do? Or you look at the footnotes, or we bury our heads, and so we don't want that. So if you have a Bible, put it away. You're not going to need it. And when I tell the story, I'm going to tell you a story from the scriptures, and you already know the story. I know this because I know your pastor and what he's been preaching on and stuff. So the story will be familiar with you. But I want you to try to see it, picture it. Oral societies, when they can't read and write, that's what they do. When they hear the story, they just picture it going on. And then when you ask them to repeat it, they just rewind that thing and play it again, and they tell you the whole thing. Now, part of it is they're better at listening than we are, because we can write it down, right? You guys, look at this row right here. They're taking notes. Yeah, put those away too. Oh, I'm killing you, isn't it?
Tell them we're videoing and they can watch it later.
Yeah, okay. So you can watch it later. But see, the same thing happens. That's what we rely on. So we don't rely on these. I got it written down. A couple people the other day were telling me they went to this church and they heard a great sermon and there was 5 points and they were telling me, and the lady was like, she got to 2 and kind of got stuck and she's looking at the man and he's like, and they sort of figured out the third and then they said, what were the other 2? I don't know, I got it written down somewhere. Exactly. We rely on that. And it's a great tool. But because of that, we don't get it in us as well. And there's something else about this. How many of you are either are or have ever done the reading through the Bible in a year plan? Yeah. How many of you ever done the Pastor Kevin read through the Bible in a month plan? Yeah, nobody. Good. No. We can do that, and it's a good thing, but sometimes, and I've done that before too, the goal is, I got to get those 5 chapters in. Okay? And guess what? I've got Psalms 119 today. 176 verses. I can already. And so we don't spend time with it. And what we're finding is that if you spend more time with less material, guess what? You get it. You get it. And sometimes, especially if we're doing a seminar, we tell a story about a guy that prepares a path up and down to the river, and he puts treasures there for the people to find. And some of the people run real fast and they don't find anything. No, other people kind of look at the first thing they find and they pick it up and they say, oh, this must be the treasure, and they take it home. But other people walk slowly down the path, and as they do, they find the things that the man put there for them. But only by walking slowly and looking carefully. The same thing with the scripture. When we get into a story, we want to walk slow and look carefully. And one of the fascinating things about this, as Kevin told you, we spent a couple of hours on a short little 10-verse story in Belize, and they couldn't believe it, but they kept finding stuff and kept finding stuff and kept finding stuff. And what I love about this is I continue to learn too, so it's fun. It's a lot more fun than preaching. and the sense of discovery is so exciting. Would you rather me tell you about the dinner that Kevin and I had? And tell you how the fish tasted, and it was yummy, and it was warm, or would you rather eat the dinner? Which one? You don't like fish, so forget it. But think about your favorite food. Would you rather have somebody describe that to you or actually experience it yourself? Yeah, we want to eat it. We want to experience it. Well, this is the same kind of thing. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you a story. By the way, this is going to be the first time I've ever done this story. And it's because of where your church is and just trying to follow the Lord in that and what He's been doing here. I've been hearing some great things. So it'll be a first for me. I hope I get it right. I'm going to tell you the story, and then I'm going to ask for somebody to be my hero tonight and repeat the story for me. Okay? So listen closely the first time, because I don't know who it'll be. And it doesn't matter if you get it all or just a little bit. It's just a process of teaching ourselves to listen. So I'll tell it. I'm going to ask for some person to save me here and tell the story back. And then we're going to review it again as a group. Then we're just going to start going into discovery. My job at that point will be to ask questions. Like I said, I'm not a preacher and don't like pastoring so much, but I do like teaching. And when teachers ask questions, what do they expect to hear? And guess what? Every answer you give will be right. How's that? I wish school was like that. I'd have done a lot better. And the reason they're going to be right is because you're just listening to the story. You're thinking about what are you hearing, what are you seeing, what's going on. And you're just talking about what you're seeing. So that's why they're going to be right. And after we do that for a while, when we do that, we're just going to talk about them, the people in the story. We won't talk about us. We won't talk about other passages or other stories. We won't. Anybody here know Greek? Shh. We don't want to hear from that. Greek, Hebrew, etc. We don't want to hear about that. We just want to look at this one story. Okay? After we talk about them for a while, then we're going to turn and talk about us at the very end. And I think you'll see how this goes. One other thing that we do is when we tell the story, we open our Bible. I'm not going to read it to you, unless I get stuck in a cheat. But because in working with illiterate people, we don't want them to feel like they have to do that. But can you figure out why we would open the Bible if we're not going to read it? Any ideas?
So they know where it came from.
Exactly. Know where it came from. This story, see, because sometimes stories are just made up. This story is from the Scriptures. Let me give you a brief introduction. This story happens after Jesus has been up on the mountain where he was transfigured. He went up there with Peter, James, and John. He took those three with him. They stayed, they talked to Moses and Elijah, they came back down. When they come back down, this is where our story starts. It says, when they came back to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them, and they were arguing with the teachers of the law. When the people saw Jesus, they were filled with wonder and ran to meet him. And Jesus asked them, what were you arguing with them about? A man in the crowd answered and said, Teacher, I brought my son to you, who is possessed by a spirit, who has robbed him of his speech. It often has thrown him when it seizes him, it throws him to the ground, and he foams at the mouth and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to cast out the spirit, but they could not. And Jesus said, oh, unbelieving generation, why must I put up with you? How long must I stay with you? Bring the boy to me. And they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately convulsed the boy, and he fell to the ground and rolled around and foamed at the mouth. Jesus asked the father, how long has he been like this? From childhood, he said. It has often thrown him into the fire and into the water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. If you can, Jesus said, anything is possible for him who believes. And the father immediately said, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. When Jesus saw that a large crowd was running to meet them, he rebuked the evil spirit. He said, you deaf and dumb spirit, I command you to come out of him and never to return to him again. The spirit shrieked and convulsed him violently and came out. The boy looked so much like a corpse that many said, he's dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he stood up. And that's the end of our story. Okay, who's going to be my hero? Who's going to do your best to try to retell that story? Doesn't matter if you get the whole thing or not. It's just an exercise. All right, right here. Come on. Come here. Help me out.
I don't think I remember I don't think I quite remember some of the disciples' names, but when Jesus and the three disciples come down from the mountain, they see a large group arguing, and they and the disciples arguing with this group of the law, and they go over to see what's going on, and they were arguing over this guy who had a son who had like a demon or evil spirit in him, and he is being convulsed, and like the spirit, and when they take him to Jesus, immediately when the evil spirit sees Jesus, it convulses in the boy and throws him on the ground, and they say, like, if you can help us, Jesus, please help us, and he says, if, and then, stop being unfaithful, you stupid people. And so then the guy says, please help me overcome my unbelief, and then Jesus rebukes the evil spirit and it convulses and leaves the boy's body, and the boy's body looks so much like a corpse that many people say he's dead, and then Jesus picks him up and he rises, rises and yeah.
Yeah, good job, good job. That rocks, you did a great job. And thank you. Boy, if he didn't volunteer, somebody else would have to, so everybody should thank him. And he got it, right? Got it. He got pretty much everything. All right, what we're going to do now is walk through it again as a group. And so, I'm like almost 51. Next month I will be, and sometimes I forget things. So if I forget something, just help me out, okay? If I get a little addled, or if I mess something up, if I say something wrong, just go, no, that's not it. And help me get it right, all right? So the story is this. Jesus comes back down the mountain. He's with those guys. That was the introduction, Peter, James, and John. And they come to the other disciples, and there's a couple of people with them, and they're just having a little conversation. What? No, what?
Large crowd.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. It was a large crowd that was around the other disciples, and they were having a party because there was a lot of people there. No? They weren't having a party? Oh, okay. The other kind of noise. They were arguing with the teachers of the law. That's right. Thank you for that. So a large crowd is around them, and they're arguing with the teachers of the law. And when the people see Jesus, they're filled with wonder, and they run to greet him. And Jesus says, what were you arguing with them about? And they say, well, I really don't know. It's one of those religious things, and who can understand those things? No? What did they say?
Arguing about the disciples not being able to get the demon out of the boy.
Okay. Good. Yeah. A man in the crowd answers, and he says, Teacher, I brought my daughter to you. Wow. What did I say wrong? Son. Okay. You guys are good. Tried to slip that one by you, but it didn't work. Okay, so teacher, I brought my son to you, who is possessed by a spirit, who has robbed him of his speech. He's robbed him of his speech. And when it seizes him, it throws him to the ground, and he foams at the mouth and gnashes his teeth and goes rigid. And he says, I asked the teachers of the law to drive the spirit out, but they couldn't do it. No? Aha! Man, I still couldn't get you. He said, I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they couldn't do it. And Jesus says, well, of course not, because they don't have the secret power. That's messed up. He didn't say that. Jesus said, oh, unbelieving generation, why must I put up with you? How long must I stay with you? And then he says, bring the boy to me. So they bring the boy to Jesus, and then it said that the boy resisted and said, no, I don't want to go. Right, that's what I said. No. Yeah, right. It says when the spirit or the demon saw Jesus, it convulsed the boy. It shrieked and convulsed the boy and threw him to the ground. And he foamed at the mouth. He rolled around and foamed at the mouth. And then Jesus asked the Father, what did he ask the Father? He said, how long has he been like this? And he said, well, it's been about, yeah, he said from childhood. From childhood. In fact, it has often thrown him where? Into the fire and into the water, trying to kill him. Right. You guys are good. You got this story. It's often thrown him into the fire and into the water, trying to kill him. And then the father says those words. He says, but if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. And Jesus said, I think some of you probably caught that. Jesus said what? If I can. Maybe he put his hands on his hips, I don't know. But if I can, anything is possible for him who believes. Anything is possible for him who believes. And the man immediately says, I want that. Right? Well, he didn't say it that way. But he said, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. And then Jesus looks up, he sees a crowd running to meet them, so he rebukes the evil spirit. He says, hey, evil spirit, your time's over. Get out of here. No? Not going to let me slip by on that? He says, you deaf and dumb spirit, I command you to come out of him and never return again. And the spirit says, I don't want to. This is where I live. I'm going to stay put. Right? No, the spirit doesn't do that either. The spirit shrieked and convulsed him violently and came out. Yes. That's okay. I got you going on the nose so much. You just think everything's a no. This time it's a yes. So it does. It shrieks and he shakes him violently and he comes out. And the boy's body looks so much like a corpse that many people said, he's dead. Yeah. Now let's have a bunch of people say that. He's dead. Yeah, see, that's what it sounded like. Oh, he's dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he stood up. Now, if you know the story real well, you know it also goes on a little bit, but for tonight I decided we're gonna end our story right there. So, you guys have the story. I believe that it's out there, and what I see already is that if somebody doesn't have one part, somebody else has it. Because all the parts I tried to mess up, you didn't miss any of them. You got them. So, we now, the group, has the story. And now is where the fun really starts, because one of the principles in this is that all of us are smarter than Pastor Kevin. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it that way. No, seriously, any group you're in, all of us are smarter than any one of us. And so here's what I want you to do. As I walk you through this and I ask you questions, just whatever you're seeing, whatever you're hearing, you call that out. You may not have it fully formed. You may say, well, there's something there. I see something in it. It's like, and go ahead and say what you're seeing, because you might only have the first half and somebody else over here is going to have the second half. And they're not sure what to do with it until you say yours. So if you have a thought, get it out there. All right? And you'll see how this works. But to begin with, I want to walk us back through here. Who are the characters in this story?
Peter, James, John.
Okay? Peter, James, and John were there in the beginning, and Jesus. Who else? We got a father, we got disciples, large crowd, the Son. We don't want to miss them. Anybody else? Oh, the demon. That's right. We don't want to miss that one either. Okay? So that's the cast of characters. And as we said, the setting, just to remind us, the setting is Jesus and his three buddies. They've been up on the mountain. They come back down. As they come to the other disciples, what are you seeing right there? Arguing. Yeah. And who's arguing? The disciples, and who else? The teachers of the law. Okay? And how many people? A lot of people. A lot of people. A large crowd. So we don't know how many that is, but it's a large crowd. And they're arguing. And what's it sounding like to you? Can you hear it?
A lot of noise.
Yeah, there you go. That was a good point. Yeah. Everybody do that for a minute. Just everybody kind of... Okay. I didn't understand any of that. All right? This is a good point. When you hear all that, you can't understand what they're arguing about. Enter Jesus. Ta-da! Whatever, I don't know. I don't think there was any musical background, but here comes Jesus. And what does it say first? When the people saw him, what did they do? They ran towards him. This is cool. Because it says they were filled with wonder and ran to meet him. He hasn't even done anything yet. He just showed up. I'm like, oh, wow, that's neat. It's like, hey, there's Jesus. Let's go. You know, forget the argument. They're excited, so they take off. Terry, I hope you keep up with me, because I usually walk a lot more than this. So
You can, I'm good.
just get that thing greased up and we'll go here.
All right.
So they run to meet him. And Jesus asked a question. What was that question? Yeah. Why are you arguing? What are you arguing with them about? The boy. The boy was bad? The boy did something? Okay. The situation was that he has an evil spirit in him and the disciples couldn't get it out. Now, we didn't talk about this, but I'll throw in a little bit more background at this point. The disciples have done this before. Okay? Jesus had sent them out before, and they have done this before. But this time, it is not working. Okay? So it doesn't work. But who gives that answer? Jesus asked the crowd. The Father does. He speaks up. He says, a man in the crowd said, Teacher, I brought my son. To who? You. Bingo. You get the bonus point. He says, Teacher, I brought my son to you. Now, was Jesus there when he brought his son? No. Who was there? The disciples. Did that stop the man from seeking help? No. It didn't. So think with me for a moment. What's going on here? He says, Teacher, I brought my son to you. You weren't here. So I asked the disciples, is the man seeing, is he right now seeing any difference between Jesus and his disciples? Whoa. Serious? Wow.
Well, he expected that there was no difference.
Yeah.
Wow. Hang on to that thought for later. There's something powerful right there. So he brings his son to Jesus. Jesus isn't there. That doesn't stop him. He says, hey, disciples, you're Jesus' people, right? So let's do this thing. That's my translation. So describe the situation with the boy. What's the deal? Okay. When does he do that? When does he foam from the mouth? Okay. And the Spirit grabs him, convulses him. What else does he do? Okay. Gnashes his teeth, shakes him, throws him down. Is this pretty? No. No. Is this? I mean, how do you think the father feels? Dads, moms. Okay, we can probably answer this. How do you think the father feels when this happens to his son? Selfless. Outraged. Wow. It happens and it happens and it happens. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Outraged and now angry at the disciples too. Come on, guys. And they're not able to do it. Wow. What else? Powerless. Okay. Upset. That's a lot of pretty strong feelings. How long has this been going on? Do we know how old the boy is? We don't know, do we? So we don't know that part, but it's been a while. Okay? Can you imagine, again, maybe parents can help us with this some. If it's been going on and going on and going on, how much does that weigh on that dad? Do you think he's, how much does he want help? More than anything. A lot. Is he, let's try to find some words to describe that. Desperate, yeah. I think that's probably the main one right there. He's desperate. Why did he come to Jesus? Okay, maybe he's heard of other miracles. Now this story doesn't tell us that, but that's a good assumption.
Nothing else has worked.
He what?
Nothing else has worked.
Nothing else has worked.
Science hasn't been able to.
Okay.
Medicine hasn't been able to.
Sure. Now does this story tell us that he tried medicine? It doesn't, but again, that's a good assumption. Yeah, because isn't a parent going to want to help a child? Okay, so a little lesson in there. The story doesn't tell us that, but that's a likely thing. Okay, very, very likely.
But the story does tell us that it's a demon, not intelligent.
Yes, yes, and that's interesting too, that they say that. They say, different Bibles will call it different. This one, NIV says spirit, others are going to say demon, but they do say that. They don't say it's an illness. They say he's got this evil spirit in him that is causing this. Okay. So you've got a desperate dad who's willing to do anything. He's probably tried all the other stuff. It's not working. He comes to Jesus. Jesus isn't there. He asks the disciples, because in his mind at this point, the disciples are as good as Jesus. Because they're whose disciples? So the assumption is that those disciples are like Jesus. Yeah, I love that part. All right, and the bottom line, he said, was, your disciples, I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, and they couldn't do it. Jesus gives a response. What does he say? Oh, unbelieving man. No. Oh, unbelieving disciples. Generation. All right, I'm kind of thick sometimes. I'm sorry. I thought we were talking to the man, and we were talking about the disciples, and Jesus says, unbelieving generation. What? Yeah, how long must I live with you? But why do you think he says this? Everybody. Why is he doing that? He's confusing me. Why does he say unbelieving generation? Why does he put this out there for everybody?
Everybody's attention, because he doesn't want it to be just for the son or just the father. He wants it to be for everybody.
Wow, that's a good idea. That's a good point. I want to get everybody's attention. If he says that, and he gets everybody's attention, do you see anything else going on there? Like, is he sending any other message to them? And if so, what is that?
Could it be that any of his followers could have done it, not just the disciples?
Wow. Do you see that? By saying, you unbelieving generation, he just put it out there to everybody. That one kind of hurts. Wow. Anybody could have done this. But it didn't happen. And then, what are you hearing in Jesus' words when he says, why must I stay with you? How long must I put up with you? Frustration.
I told you again and again. How do you confuse this?
Okay.
You're not hearing a word he said, wah, wah, wah.
Wah, 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 wah. I'm tired of the ground. Wah, wah. Yeah. Wow. So, who's frustrated? You said frustration. Who's frustrated? Jesus is. Yeah. So Jesus, you ever think about that? Jesus is frustrated. He's not just walking around going, that's Boy Scouts. You know? So Jesus is frustrated. And he's frustrated with all the people. But then he says what? Bring the boy to me. Do the people do that? Yeah. What happens next? Who sees Jesus? Not the boy. The Spirit sees Jesus. As soon as the Spirit sees Jesus, it responds. What's that tell us? It's afraid of him? Power of God? What about it? Okay. Okay.
Why does the Spirit shriek in front of the people?
Okay. Why did the Spirit shriek? Wow. Okay.
Why didn't it react at that point?
Okay. Okay. That's a good question. I know there's a, hang on to those. I want to get this and then get the next one. She's thinking about the story and she's saying, why didn't the Spirit shriek when it was just the disciples and the others? Why did the Spirit shriek when it saw Jesus? Recognized him?
Fearful.
Power of God? So if we're saying the power of God, where was the power of God before?
That's the issue.
It was what?
That's the issue.
Aha! That's the issue. Was it there or missing?
No faith.
It was there, but they didn't see it. No faith. Okay.
It was their unbelief that
Their unbelief. What did their unbelief do?
Kept them from seeing it.
It stopped it. It kept it from happening.
But it must have overshadowed, because they were the disciples, so it was there.
Okay.
But they've been doing it,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah. They had done it before.
So it wasn't like they didn't have the power,
Yeah.
but something.
Something was blocking that. Okay. Good. Good. This is fascinating. Very good stuff. Okay. So.
Could it be that what was blocking it was that deaf and dumb spirit
Sure.
that was in the midst?
Sure.
That had a hold of the boy? Maybe it transferred to the people.
Wow.
Possibly.
Wow. So it didn't just have the boy? Maybe the influence was larger than that?
Possibly because they didn't believe.
Okay. Okay.
Did Jesus only ask the Father, why don't you believe?
He didn't actually ask that question in this story. Some stories he does. In this one, he doesn't. He just says to everybody, "Oh, unbelieving generation." He calls out everybody. He says, "Unbelieving generation." Just lays it on all of them. Rick?
Maybe the faith is not like an on-off switch, but degree. Because
Okay.
the Father says, I believe to help my unbelief. So
Yeah.
apparently there
There's
are
something.
degrees of.
Maybe that's it. You know, the rheostat on the light, when you slide it up, when you push it all the way up, it's all the way on, but part way, it's only part, you know, I don't know, maybe it's something like that. Now, one thing, here's one little caution when we do stories like this. We don't want to put things in that aren't there. So we can't really say, well, you know, maybe the Spirit just projected itself over everybody. No, we can't test that according to the story. It's fine to think it. We can't answer it. So we won't know. So we'll just keep going. We'll go with what is in the story, because I've put so many details in there that we'll get it. And right now you guys have hit on it. The biggest thing is their unbelief. Their unbelief. And you're right. The next thing that comes up, when Jesus, when the Father says, the Father makes a plea, and when Jesus says, how long has it been like this? What's the answer? From childhood. It's always been like this. It has often thrown him into the fire and into the water to do what? To kill him. Did it kill him? Okay, so what happened? Think about what you just heard. It has often thrown him into the fire. It has often thrown him into the water, but he didn't die, so what happened? He got what? He got injured. What else happened? Dad was there to haul him out. This has happened often. He got hurt. His son got hurt, but Dad went in and got him. Think about that. He went into the fire. He went into the water and brought his son out. So now Dad says, but if you can do anything to help who? My son? What were the words? Anybody remember? If you can do anything to help,
Unbelief.
not yet.
Not yet.
That's coming. That's next. If you can do anything to help us. Exactly. Exactly. If you can do anything to help us, take pity on us and help us. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. So who's really in this? Both of them. It's not just the Son. The Father's gone into the water. He's gone into the fire. He's been through all of this with his Son, and he's saying that. And Jesus responds, I love this part. What were his words? If you can. If you can. And he says, many things are possible for him who believes. Right?
All things.
Still can't catch it. He says, anything is possible for him who believes. Anything. What's that include? Yeah. Anything. Everything. You're right. Everything is possible. And the Father immediately says, what? The thing you were just saying.
Oh, count mine.
Yeah. I do believe.
Oh, I do believe.
I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. Hello.
I believe.
I liked English, but now I'm a little bit confused. He says, I do, but... So what's he saying there? Somebody put that like simple for me so I can understand it. I do, but I don't.
Some, but not all.
I do some, but not all.
He believes, but because of everything that's happened with his son, he and the demon
Mhm.
is maybe unbelief.
Okay. He believes. Okay, question. It's causing him to maybe not believe, or he's questioning. Good. I do, but I don't. Some, but not all. I do, but man, this is hard. And he does say, help me overcome. Help me overcome it.
I would say he went believing until they
Okay.
couldn't do it.
Okay.
And
Aha.
and so it was more for everybody else.
Wow. Wow. Did you guys hear that? She said, she's thinking about the whole picture, this whole story here, and I like what she's saying because she's saying she believes he went believing. And when the disciples couldn't do it, the belief started dropping. And now, it's not just him anymore, is it? There's a bunch of people. Now it's a very public thing. Now everybody's involved. That's very good. Yeah. Yeah. It's really grown. Okay? So we go there. He says, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. And then Jesus looks up, and what's he see happening? Who's coming? A whole bunch of people coming. And so he speeds things up. He rebukes the spirit, and he calls it. Now the Father said there's a spirit who has robbed him of his speech. Did the Father say anything about him not being able to hear?
But it was there on everybody else.
Because Jesus doesn't say it the way the Father did. He said, you deaf and you deaf and dumb. How did Jesus know that? And don't say, well, it's because he's Jesus. That's the Sunday school answer. We don't want that. I know the story doesn't tell us.
He watched the boy and saw his reactions to things
Okay.
around him, his lack of reaction.
Okay. That could be a good point. See, I didn't even know what the answer was. I just asked a question. So thank you, Kathy, for finding that, because I didn't know.
Possibly the word of knowledge here.
Okay. So let's put these two things together. A couple of things he could have done. He could have been watching the boy and noticed that all the noise, the boy never turned towards the noise. Never acknowledged the noise. Could have had a word of knowledge that told him, it's not just his speech that's gone. He can't hear either. So Jesus used that, whichever it was, and he called it out. You deaf and dumb spirit, I command you. Is that a suggestion? Is that a request? No. What is that? It's an order. Listen, I command you to do what? Leave. And never come back. Wow. Leave and never come back. Did the spirit hear Jesus? Wait a minute. I thought the spirit was deaf and dumb. Okay, the spirit made the boy deaf and dumb, but the spirit wasn't deaf and dumb. The spirit screamed, he shrieked, he shook the boy violently, and he did what? Came out. So did the spirit obey Jesus?
Yes. Recognize you.
Yes. It recognized Jesus' authority, and obeyed, and came out. What's the result? Now we're near the end of our story, so what's the result? What do you see right now?
Laying on the ground, looking lifeless.
Dead boy. Looks dead. In fact, so many people said what? Dead. Yeah, just like that.
Confused dad, mad, angry dad.
Wow, yeah, we're forgetting about him. Thank you. Forgetting about him. What's Dad doing now? Is it,
Killed him with something.
Jesus, you killed my boy. So I wasn't on him. I missed him. I'm listening to the crowd. Oh, he's dead. He's dead. Yeah. You know. And Dad's like, oh, I brought him to you so you would help me, and you killed my son. Is that the end of the story? No. This story has a happy ending. Jesus does what? Takes him by the hand and lifts him up, and he stood up. And for us tonight, that's where we end the story. Fascinating, isn't it, to see what happens here? I want to review just a little bit of this, and then we're going to talk about us. We've just been talking about them, the people in the story. One of the things you guys said early on that I really liked was when the Father brought his Son to Jesus, and Jesus wasn't there, he asked the disciples for help. And was he seeing a difference between them? No. Wow. That's really powerful. He didn't see a difference. Until what happened? Until they couldn't do it, until they were not able. Then he saw a difference. Okay? What else were we saying? The Spirit listened to Jesus. The Spirit recognized Jesus. The people are unbelieving. Jesus' assessment of the generation is that they're unbelieving. Okay? But in the end, here's a question. In this story, who believes in Jesus? And I heard another answer. I heard the demon and the Father. Wow. Wow. That's interesting. Who do you think believed by the end? Maybe everybody. Okay?
Maybe that's why the disciples weren't able to do it. Maybe it wasn't God's will that it was done at that time until the crowd gathered, until the it was right.
Okay.
So maybe when you said they had the power the whole time, but it was God's plan that if it would have been taken up, they would have been successful at that point. It would have had the impact.
Okay.
As large an impact as it did the way it played out.
Okay, sure. And we can't know all of that because we can't test exactly in this story, but I like what you're saying in part of this because the witness would have been lost to everybody else. It could have happened a different way. If the disciples did it, they would have said, wow, these disciples of Jesus, they're pretty good. So here's one of the things we look for. We look for words, we look for actions, we look for choices, and we look for results. What you are just talking about is the actions that didn't happen with the disciples but did with Jesus, and the results were that everybody then got to see this. What if it happened differently? Think with me for a moment. What if the man brought his son to the disciples, said, can you get the spirit out? And they said yes, and boom, took him out. How would that have changed this?
Wouldn't have had the impact.
A lot less people would have seen it. What else?
Wouldn't have had the impact.
Wouldn't have had the same impact. Is there a flip side to that coin? Coins have two sides. Is there another side that would have been good?
Well, the dad would have been like, well, I knew you guys could do it. Just prove it. The disciples
Okay.
would have known you're Jesus.
The dad would have affirmed, yeah, you are Jesus people. What else?
Didn't Jesus heal the boy and put him in the same crowd that was arguing before the other
Ah.
boy came running after him?
Yeah.
So would
Yeah.
the witness still been the same?
Very good. Very good. See, I didn't think about that either.
God's words are real either way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, how
Good. Good. I like that. I like that. The same people were there, came running over to welcome Jesus when he got there. They were part of the argument, and so they ended up seeing it. So that's great. Just see how the more we think through the story and catch the details, we figure things out. I never caught that before either. What else?
If it wasn't in God's will to have the disciples be able to do it, would Jesus have experienced the frustration?
Okay. Okay. Would Jesus have experienced the frustration?
it's to go, I mean, I know we're not supposed to go beyond certain best and instruct them how to
Yeah.
deal with this.
Yeah. And this kind, yeah, that wasn't included in what you were saying either. Jesus does say, okay, this kind was a little special. This time, if the story goes on, it comes out by prayer or prayer and fasting. Okay. Let's turn this for a moment. You guys did a great job with observations. I have learned some things already that I didn't catch before because of you helping me. Let's turn this a minute and talk about us. If you were in this story, you were one of the characters, where would you put yourself? Who do you relate to in this story? Disciples? How many say, yeah, I'd be one of the disciples? Okay? We don't have 9, but that's okay. Now I should say, which bunch of disciples? The 9 or the 3? She's going to think about it. Okay, the disciples. Who else? Who else do you relate to in this story?
Well, I relate to the dad because my daughter has seizures.
Okay, all right, very good. You're going to relate to the dad because you can definitely connect because your daughter has seizures. Okay, good.
The 9.
The 9. Okay. Tried, couldn't get there. Okay, good. Thank you. Who else? The crowd? Okay, we're in a crowd. How many of you say, yep, that's me, I'd be part of the crowd? Nobody? Just one person? Wow. Chickens. Oops, I didn't say that. I didn't say that out loud. I didn't mean it. No, that's okay. Do you think the whole crowd thinks the same? No. Never, right? Yeah, you're right. I heard somebody say that. Okay. Anybody relate to Jesus? Okay. All right. The boy. Oh, that's a good question. How many relate to the boy? Okay. All right. Good, good. Sometimes this is fun to do in stories. We don't have to answer this, but I want to just throw this out there. When you do this part and you say, well, who do you relate to in the story, then sometimes a good question to follow that up with is this. Who would you like to be in this story? Anyone want to try that? Who would you like to be in this story? One of the 3? Okay. Jesus. All right. Who else? Who would you like to be?
Boy,
Okay, boy. Man, go from tragedy to triumph. Got a great story. Okay. Okay, let's do this. We talked about, you made the observation earlier that the, what was that first one I wanted to catch? Somebody help me. I just said it. The disciples. The man brings his son to the disciples, expecting them to do just like Jesus came. Who are the disciples today? The church. We are. I like how you're saying that. I didn't see anybody point and say, well, we are. So do you think there's an expectation today on us to be able to do the things that Jesus does?
should be.
I'm seeing some.
I don't think we can be stewards of that expectation.
What's that?
I don't think we can be stewards of that expectation.
Okay, okay. Usually when I see slow nods, that's that kind of. Yeah, if I agree, say that again. Yeah. If I agree, I'm pointing right here. Ooh, ah.
The expectations seem to be stronger from the Father, who's the outsider, rather than amongst the disciples and the crowd.
Wow. Wow. Rick said the expectations seem to be stronger from the Father, who's the outsider, than it was from the disciples who, should have had it.
I have a question. It's bugging me. How did the Father know it was an unclean spirit?
I don't know.
Throw it into the fire.
Yeah, I was trying to kill the boy.
Yeah, from the story, and this is the great principle. You always try to answer the question from the story. So thank you for helping me. It's trying to kill the boy. It's tried many times to kill the boy.
I want to point out something I find interesting is that a really awesome message is that God wanted that really good. God's, his desire for that holy good was, when Jesus did it.
Okay.
Even when the disciples couldn't do it, God's will for that boy was to be good.
Okay.
For that need to be passed out.
Yeah.
So that's something that I can take away.
And where do we, anything. Uh-huh.
I want to follow up on Kathy's question, though. How, we have people with today, seizures and so on, that can put them in very dangerous or harmful situations.
Yeah.
We don't point fingers and say they have an evil spirit. So how did he know it was an evil spirit?
Yeah. How are we going to answer that? Since we're talking about us now, how are we going to answer that? Discernment, gifts of the Spirit. Who knows the answer to that? I mean, literally, who knows the answer to that? God does. Think we could ask him? Think he would answer? Yeah, I think so too. I think if we ask him, he'll tell us. And we'll know. Is this one a spirit or is this a chemical imbalance? Is this something neurological? I don't know all those things. I'm not a doctor. I can't do any of that.
You know that the medicine basically that Jesus prescribed the disciples on how to grow in the area is the same disciplines that we learn on how to gain knowledge and gifts of the Spirit.
Okay.
And I think the way that Jesus is basically saying, seek this.
Okay. All right. So Jesus has the answer, right? We can ask God, and he can say. And we don't typically do this, but if you've done other stories, then you can borrow from those stories at this point to try to understand some things. Is everybody, for the stories that you know, okay, breaking the rules here, but for the stories you know, is everybody healed just like right away? No. It's time. Can you think of any that were not healed until a certain time or for a long time?
We don't know if false.
Let me help you with that, okay, since I asked the question. Think about the man who was lame and was that way for 38 years and then was healed at the pool of Siloam. And then he's healed. He doesn't even know who healed him, which, that's amazing. But anyhow, then he's healed. He picks up his mat and he goes, and the Pharisees see him and say, "Hey, you're carrying your mat. That's illegal on the Sabbath. You don't be doing that." And he says, "Well, the guy that healed me said, pick up your mat and walk, so I did. Figured if he healed me, it's okay." And they said, "Well, who did that?" He said, "I don't know." And then they're like, "Well, that's not really you." That is, all this kind of stuff comes up. And they say, "No, it's him."
I see in this story the crowd being the church too, because when Jesus came, they ran to him, and so if they must have recognized him as a person of spiritual authority. So the crowd represents the church.
Yeah.
In the story.
Yeah.
They would have gone running to Jesus when they saw him.
Right.
And then he said, "Oh, unbelievers, oh, unbelieving
Yeah.
generation." So
Yeah.
if they knew him enough to run to him, why didn't they know him enough to deal with the situation? So.
Great. You ever feel that? We're the Jesus people.
Get into the church and turn it over to God.
Rick?
As badly as God wanted the boy to be healed, for years and years he wasn't healed until it was through the human person, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. What also brought that boy to Jesus? What did we say about the dad? His father's belief. What else? Desperation. When the father came with desperation, when he was desperate enough, he went to Jesus to get help. He didn't care if it was Jesus or who? The disciples. Could that happen here? Could you be here one day as the crowd, as the church, and you're here and Pastor Kevin's not? And somebody comes in and they're just desperate and they say, "Help me!" Can you take care of that? Why do you say yes?
We're commanded to.
We're commanded to. Well, that settles it. We're commanded to.
I think the story displays, and this goes along with what Rick said about, as much as God wanted the boy to be healed, it wasn't until through human hands he was healed. And I think that shows this story is about the authority that God has given us
Okay.
to bring heaven to earth.
Okay. So the authority's there. It's been given. We've been commanded to. the expectation of the person coming in is you guys, you're the holy people. You're the Jesus people. You can do this. So what's our part in that? We live up to that?
I think what's said later, too, when the disciples are asking him why, and he said through prayer and fasting. I know that prayer and fasting is sacrifice. And so there wasn't that instant gratification with the disciples in the healing happening. And so I think it was also could have been a way of Jesus in ways that maybe they were lacking in some belief or in dedication or,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In sacrificing to have that healing.
Yeah. Let's throw that in there for a minute. We didn't include it tonight, and I kind of did on purpose, but let's add it in right now. Because it says, when you go on in the story, later after they went inside, the disciples asked Jesus privately. They had enough of the public part. They said privately, why couldn't we do this? He says, this kind only comes out by prayer and fasting. So, did Jesus stop when the boy was brought to him and say, okay, I need to pray first? Did he do that?
He's living a life.
Well, he had just come down from an ultimate worship experience.
Okay.
Right? He was with God, Moses, and Elijah.
Okay.
So, I mean, he was full.
Okay.
He's in the constant flow of communication with his daddy. I mean,
Okay.
so he lives a life of prayer. That's
All right.
just, it's just
And,
is what
and
it
if
is.
you're reading it prayer and fasting, did he say, well, wait a minute, I need to go fast? So when did he do that? Did he say to, oh, I'm sorry, this is spiritual warfare. We'll set an appointment. I'll be ready on that day, and I'll be back. Did he say that? No. So how come he could do this?
Is it possible that when Jesus says this kind can only be through prayer and fasting, is this kind necessarily the demon possessed and the spirit, or is this kind the unbelief that would generate?
Whoa. Wow, that's a good question. Who wants to answer that? That's great. I want to answer. What was the question? Jesus said, no, okay, I'll help you here. Jesus said, what is possible for him who believes? Anything. So was it really the spirit that was the big problem? See, I see heads going, So what was the problem? Belief. The unbelief.
And the disciples had to believe that they could because he said they couldn't. So they tried thinking
They tried.
They could.
Good. So they tried.
Where was the unbelief?
Yeah. Have you felt like that? You don't have to say when, but have you ever felt like that? You felt like, yeah, I think I'm okay, I think I'm good, and then it wasn't really working, and your faith kind of started like a water leaking out of a bucket, kind of dropping down. You relate to that? What do you do then? What they do? They ask Jesus. Okay? What was the problem? How come we couldn't do this?
Could it have been their attitude of prayer and fasting, that they just weren't in that right attitude that Jesus had, that, and they were in an argument with others so they had an argumentative attitude going on and all that.
Very good. Thank you, Terry, because you're sticking to the story, and again, we're getting the answers. I love this. Because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, Ray, what are you going to say? I don't know. Terry's got it. Terry's got it. You think about the story. There's a couple things going on. One, doesn't tell us, but if Jesus says this kind comes out by prayer and fasting, then maybe they weren't praying and fasting. Think about it. Where was Jesus? Up on the mountain with his three best buds, right? So he's up there. So when the boss is gone, what are the others doing? Hanging out, kicking back, maybe performing. I heard that, I didn't want to repeat it. Maybe so, okay? But Jesus is gone. He's their spiritual leader. And so maybe they're relaxing, getting comfortable. They slipped into the back row. Sorry.
Because if they really believe, why did they go running to Jesus? Because the disciples first said, there he is. Instead of here we are, it's there he is.
Yeah. Hey, there's the guy with the answers.
I think also with the disciples, when they fail, we need to think about what their motives were. And I don't think their motives were necessarily bad, but they weren't right, as in, like, maybe their motive was to prove that Jesus was right. And that can't be the motive. The motive has to be love all the time. Love conquers all.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Yeah, and I agree. And that could well be in there. Hard to fathom all that and pick it out from the story, but it's good to be thinking about. And the other part that was there was what Terry said about they were just arguing.
It shows their heart.
Yeah, it shows something about their heart. They tried it, it didn't work, and then it broke down into an argument. Do you feel real spiritual when you're arguing? I don't. I mean, I may. And they go, I'm right, you're wrong, and by golly, I'm going to quote scripture until you admit it. Does that work? No. It doesn't work. And if that argumentative spirit comes in, that punched another hole in that bucket, and the level's coming down faster. Right? And the unbelief is coming up. Good. I have an idea that we could probably keep going with this, but I want to kind of draw it together for you. And let me ask you a couple of questions I always like to ask. How many of you, just from what we've done tonight, learned something about the story you didn't know before? Wow. How many of you think you could tell this story to somebody else? Wow. Pastor, you need to look around and see that. Do that again, one more time. Look at all the teachers you have now. I didn't tell you that part, did I? See, this is part of the beauty of this, and this is part of what I love. It empowers people. And let me tell you something. I want to pray over you and commission you before we leave to do this, to go tell this story to somebody else, because you are the disciples. You are the ones that Jesus is coming to, or I'm sorry, that the man is coming to, the desperate man is coming to and saying, help me. Help me. Because some of them aren't going to come to him. He works in the holy place over there, and they're nervous about that. And some of them only know you. They don't even know about this. They know you because they've seen you across the fence, or across the desk, or whatever it is. And so they see you, and they've seen something in you, and they go, you're a Jesus disciple, right? Okay. And if they're desperate enough, they come to you. Because you're real. He's special. You're a pastor. It's different. And it is, right? It really is. But you're more real. You're just a regular person. I can talk to you. And you can talk to them. Now, is the power in what you know?
That's what they were arguing.
Aha! That's the very thing they were arguing over. The answer is no. The power is not in what you know. Where's the power? What you believe. And in this case, we're talking about a Bible story and sharing a Bible story. The scripture says in Isaiah 55, God says, my word will not go out and return empty without accomplishing the purpose I send it for. So guess what? If you share a Bible story with somebody, what's it going to do?
It'll produce what God wanted it.
Amen. It's going to produce what God wants it to. And so whether it's this story or some other story, and you're talking to a buddy or somebody you just met because you're fixing a flat tire or whatever, and it seems like God says, tell them. Me? Tell them? Tell them the story. Just do it. God knows. What does God know? He knows your heart. He knows their heart. He knows what's going on. He knows, I picked this story. I wasn't thinking, I didn't know you have a daughter that has epilepsy, that has seizures or whatever it is. God knows that. Kind of had that moment of going, did I pick this story? I didn't pick this story, so it's not my fault. But God knows. So the power is not in how we deliver things or anything else. The power is in the Scripture. We do need to deliver it, as you said, with what? What was the thing that they didn't have? Belief. So we need to deliver it with belief. The Scripture says, let him who speaks speak as if they speak the very words of God. And that's what you're doing. You're just telling a story. But it's so powerful.
Can't tell you my memory stinks. But in the last couple of years, I've heard some very impactful messages from Kevin that have been life-changing. But it would be difficult for me to repeat those to somebody. It was a year ago that I heard you tell a story about the path going down, the guys going down to the river on the path. And I could repeat that story. And the blind man,
Blind Bartimaeus.
calling to Jesus, throwing his coat
Yeah.
to the crowd and running to Jesus.
Yeah.
And I can remember them.
Amen. See, that's part of what's exciting about this. I think Pastor said earlier, he used a scary word. I think he said memorize. Did anybody hear that? Yeah. That scare you? Yeah. Ooh. That's scary. I gotta memorize that. Did it feel like you memorized anything tonight? No, absolutely not. You know, when we got here after that fish dinner that you guys didn't get to experience, but I did, Kevin left me in his office, and what I did was the way to learn these, and I want to tell you this before we close, is you simply pick your story, or let God pick the story. Read it out loud. There's something that happens when you read out loud. Like right now, I'm speaking, and so what am my ear hearing? What I'm speaking. So my mind is getting both. My mind is getting what I'm reading, what I'm speaking, and what I'm hearing, because my mind is much better than I am. It can do all that. So you read it out loud, you stick your finger in it, close your Bible, and repeat however much you can remember, just like my hero did for me in repeating the story, okay? And then you open, and you go all the way through it. Don't stop and go, oh, I forgot the fourth word. That's memorizing. We don't do that. You open it up again when you finish, and you read it again. How? Out loud. Yes, very good. You got good students here, Kevin. You read it again out loud, and your mind starts to pick up words that you forgot and puts them right in place. Put your finger in it, close it, do it out loud again. Open it up, read it out loud. And it doesn't take too long before you get that. I'm going to tell you, tonight, I was nervous coming in here to do this, so that I don't know this story. I've never done this story. I don't know if I know it. But I did. And I got it, I think, probably 90-something% accurate. Okay? And it's just the way you do it. And it's amazing, like Rick said, a year ago, he heard a couple of these stories, and he still remembers them. That's not memorizing. That's just the way our minds work.
I had to step in and out, but I wanted to give a testimony about the story, because when we were in Jamaica, I would listen to Ray do the story. I'd be in there the one night, and then we ended up in this one little town, and we talked a little bit about this, but we ended up in this one town where there was only a couple people in the room when it started, and Ray and Rob and Kevin were all in there, so I thought, well, they don't really need me in here. I went outside, and there's all these people hanging around outside, and they wouldn't go in. And I said, well, you guys come in. Oh, this isn't our church. We go to the church up on the hill. This isn't our church. I said, well, you're welcome to come in. No, they weren't going to go in. This isn't our church. We don't go here. But they stood outside, and they were all standing in the street. And I had the guy smoking ganja, and I had the lady with the 3 children, and I had all these people on the street. And they were standing outside. When the music played, they all sang, and they clapped, and they sang. When our music stopped, there was a church down the street, and their music was still going. They were having a revival, and they all started singing to that. So I'm outside singing with all these people in the street, and swaying, and amen. And then it gets quiet, and I see Ray step up inside, and he starts story. So I'm standing out there with these people, and this is still not going to go in. This is my friend Ray. He's going to tell a story. That's not our church, man. We're not going in it. I said, well, what he's doing? And I told them the story that Ray had told the night before, because I sat there and heard it and repeated it and gone through it. So I'm saying, what he's doing, we could see him. There's no screens down there. We could see him standing in there in the light talking. And I said, what he's doing now is he's telling a story. And this is how the story goes. And I'm doing the same thing he's doing in the street. I don't know if we're doing the same story or not, because I couldn't hear it. But I'm telling the story he did the night before. And I tell him the story. Then I asked him to repeat it. And then I told him the questions. Because I was just explaining to them how it goes. It was really cool. Because, like you said, I had it in my head because I just heard it and I was able to repeat it. And it was very non-threatening. You know, I never whipped out my Bible. I didn't start preaching to them or anything like that. I was just telling them the story. And they knew the story, some of them. They were like, oh, yeah, we know about this Jesus. Yeah, when he did that. And then I said, well, look, I got to go inside now. They need my help. I'm going inside. And I went inside. And they all followed me in. And they all came in. And it was like weird. They all came in off the street. But it was all because we had a really simple story, non-threatening, something they could understand. We met.
And I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I'm humbled to be a part of it. And I just, if you want to pray for this to continue, please do. I believe that God is going to use this around the world to even remake our church and how we train pastors. Tell me this. What pastor do you think would not be a better pastor if they had 80 or 100 stories in their head and in their heart that they could just tell? Think that would work? Okay, now let's say what disciple would be a better disciple if they had 20 stories just in their head and in their heart? Think that would work? Yeah. So when are you going to start your Bible storytelling class? In India, I can tell you all night long stories that I've read about and people I've talked to about how well this has worked. In India, one that sticks in my mind, a Hindu man became Christian, and he so wanted to do something for the church, but he couldn't. He couldn't read and write. He couldn't do anything like that. And you had to read and write to teach Sunday school. You had to be able to follow the lessons, so he couldn't do that. A group came through and taught Bible storytelling. And he said, I can do this. So he went outside the church, didn't talk to the pastor or anything. He just went out and found a group of 30 Hindus and started telling them the stories that the church was telling him. He would listen careful, and then he would go out and tell them. And one by two, this group of 30 Hindus became 30 former Hindu believers. He started a church. A man who couldn't read and write started a church. And that's happening over and over and over. Some of the people I got to interview in Kenya, they were so exciting to me because they were empowered. They heard this and they just turned around and went. In fact, they had a group of men that was doing this, pastors, and the women that had been brought there to cook for them kind of kept listening in and hearing what was going on and hearing the guys practice and hearing the guys talk about it at night because the men were all excited about it. And the women said, we want class. And the leaders were like, we're not prepared for that. You're here to cook. They said, but we want a class. We want to know how to do this. They said, but we would need other cooks. They said, no problem. We'll get other cooks. So it took them a little time to get organized. They found other cooks, and they started a separate class for the women. And they were in there learning this stuff and just getting these stories. And the cool thing is, when the story is in you, it comes out later. And these folks were learning them, going back to their villages and telling them, and more people were wanting to hear the stories. Here's what it does for evangelism. It takes all the fight out. Muslims are coming to Christ in large numbers because the fight is gone. It's not, okay, I believe in God, you believe in Allah, and you're wrong, and Muhammad is wrong, and the fight is gone because you're just discussing a story. They get involved just like you got involved, and they end up, the Holy Spirit does a little trick on all of us here. And this is it. When we're making observations, we're putting ourselves into the story, and we're kind of turning that finger right towards ourselves. So that when we say a lot of those things, we realize later, oh my goodness, I was talking about me. I didn't realize that. And God uses that, the Holy Spirit uses that to convict a lot of these Muslims and Hindus and others with no fight, no argument. And they come out saying, I want to know that God. Allah is not like that. Muhammad is not like that. I want to know that God. I want to know more about your God. Tell me another story. I've heard of people standing up in weddings in India and telling a Bible story. And people come to Christ right there. I've used these. You can even do short versions. You can do a lot of stories that are 5 or 10 verses. How long do you think it takes to tell that story? 10 verses. How long do you think it takes us? 9 seconds. 90 seconds. Okay. Minute and a half. 2 minutes. A lot of times that's it. You can practically, and I know people who've done this, you can talk to the lady at the checkout counter while she's mindlessly scanning your stuff, and tell her a little story and give her something to think about. Jesus did this all the time. He told parables, which are little stories, and many times he gave you the story and he walked away. Because he planted the seed, and then it's in you, and you're going, huh. And the stories do stick with us, and we can think about it when we're driving a car, or we're sitting in traffic, or we're, doing whatever. These stories will come back. So I'm going to stop. But it's a fascinating thing. I think. Did you enjoy this? All right. One more question. Who taught the lesson? Aha! You are good. What did I do? I just stood here and looked pretty, right? I'm glad I look pretty, but no. I helped, but I just asked questions. I just facilitated. You guys made the observations. Okay, so one little tip with this, when you lead a story, you just need to ask a lot of questions. Just get curious. Just get curious. Ask questions about anything, everything that's going on in the story. You'll find stuff. Okay? Now, I do want to ask you this. I was at a church out in New Jersey near Philadelphia the other day. We did a story kind of there, and I talked to the people there. And two questions. One is this. Do you think it's important to feed your body? Yeah? Do you eat every day? Yeah? If you eat at least one time a day, raise your hand. Okay. We do. Do you eat more than one time a day? Yeah? How many? How many times? 10. Wow. Wow. Maybe 10 times. Right? We think it's important to feed our bodies, right? Okay? So we do that. Let me challenge you to do this. It's also important to feed our souls, to feed our spirits, right? For me, this is first thing every morning. I've got to do this. If my spirit doesn't get fed, my day is not good. One way or another. Either I'll screw up or I'm not ready to help somebody or whatever. So let me challenge you. Don't worry about a reading plan. Don't worry about any great goals. Just do this little simple thing. Only read this on days that you feed your body. Is that a deal? Will you do that?
Yes.
Let me hear it. If you'll do that, say amen.
Amen.
All right. Good. One other thing. If you will try to tell this story to somebody else, say amen.
Amen.